Hey everybody, so in this episode of Pings Are Weird, I'm going to talk about something that nobody's really asked me, but I thought it might be helpful, and that is how to choose and keep track of siblings of your hybrids. So say you've done a hybrid and you've got all these seedlings and they're coming along. How do you decide which ones to keep? Because you probably can't keep all of them. And what do you do with them? So for me, in the beginning, the question really wasn't a question. It was just trying to get some seeds. And I still have the product of that first hybrid I ever did. I call it Flopsy because it flops. And it's not a great plant. It's not a bad plant, but I keep it around because it's my first one. But as you start doing more, you start thinking about what you want. So for example, I really love Cyclosecta. Beautiful plant with dark purple leaves, big purple flowers. There's a lot of different varieties of it around too. As you start growing more plants, you'll find them. And then I also like Gigantea because it's huge. So I was hoping to get a big plant with purple in it. Basically, that was what I was going for. So I did that, and I ended up with 30 or 40 seedlings of that. And some of them were not so great. This one doesn't really show much purple at all. And it probably will get big, but okay, I have other big plants. Then I chose the ones that showed the most purple early on. Some other ones have showed it since then. So here are three that I kept. And the first one is purple and it's growing. It's not great, but it's okay. I like these two because it shows a character that often comes for some reason from Gigantea hybrids, and that's a pointed leaf. And I haven't really decided which one I like better. I think the middle one, just because it shows a little more of the purple. So in that case, this is the one that I'll probably keep and propagate more of. This one I might keep around for a while too, because sometimes you don't really know what they're going to develop into until you've grown them a year or two. In another case, I did Sumidero, which is a Morinensis species. This is just opened here, has a really big purple flower. There's a couple varieties of it. And then I crossed that with Anpasi, which I don't have in bloom right now. But it's also a Morinensis variety with white flowers, and it blooms a lot. And so I crossed them, and the flowers are all pretty similar. They're big. There's one over here that I decided to keep early, has kind of interesting leaf habits and really a good size, very substantial flower. But as I look at the other ones left here that are just growing in the pot, I notice one has a lot of red around the edge. So that's a nice thing. The flower is pretty much like the other one, although I like the contrast on the other one. Now, some people don't care about flowers and only care about leaves. I preferably like to have both. Another one I did, and this is why you should grow them on, is Elizabethae by Anpasi. So here's Elizabethae. It's just coming into bloom. One of the characteristics of this is that when it comes into bloom, it just throws flower after flower after a flower. And often you'll get to the point where you have maybe 9 flowers active on a plant. It's like a bouquet. So that's a fun characteristic to have. Then there's Anpasi, which once it starts blooming, it kind of never stops through its summer stage. And once again, I don't have that one in bloom right now, although on my video about how to cross, how to hybridize and how to pollinate, you can see one. So the plants that came out of that all looked kind of like this. So, you know, it's interesting. I kind of like, there's an interesting venation in it that's really faint. I don't even know how well you can see it here. So I decided to keep them on just to see what they would do. Here's one that has a little bit of color in it. That comes from the Anpasi. But then after, and I had like one bloom on each one just to see. So For example, a lot of them turned out like this. It didn't really knock my socks off, but there was one that had a really unusual bloom, and that's this one. But as I grew it the second year, I'm starting to get that bouquet effect where they throw lots of flowers at once. And so this one only has a few now, but there's more coming along. I've seen up to 5 flowers on it. So a big, interesting flower and 5. It took 2 years for me to see that that happened. There's another example of an Ampassi hybrid again. So this was Ampassi by Wazer. And most of the plants came out looking like this, variations on this theme. And I like it. It's not the most special plant that I've ever had, but I like it. It does tend to hedgehog a lot like this. It splits a lot. And so I decided to keep one of them. The rest of them were kind of green. But then there was one plant that showed a lot of venation. And that one is this one here. Also, the flowers were a little different. I really appreciate that dark center on this one. If we can zoom in, it's not quite as easy to see now. It becomes a lot more evident when the temperatures go down in the fall. But it has this really nice venation and kind of an unusual leaf shape on it. So that's another one. Now, sometimes the culling process gets a little difficult. One hybrid I did that has just been really productive in terms of variation is Lauiana by Morinensis veripaz, which I call Big Purple Thing, and then I crossed that back with Lauiana. I pollinated it with Lauiana. So I got some of the plants are becoming kind of known, like Malibu Barbie, Jethrine, what else? Pink Eye is another one of them. They're just coming out because we've had a long, cold spring here, and summer came late. So they're just waking up here, but you can see there's some nice leaf patterns and really interesting flower colors. They're like almost red, not quite. A few of them are just pink. So I've been loath to get rid of any of them too early. Jethrine is one that's a really big, robust red one. And so one of the reasons that there is so much variation in this one is that it's a back cross. So I did a cross with Lauiana and Morinensis veripaz, and then I crossed it back to Lauiana, and that gives you all sorts of variation or possibilities for it. So then I thought, what happens if I back cross it again? So I crossed Jethrine with Lauiana, and this gave me an amazing bunch of variation. And I've seen the summer leaves. Some of them are still just peeking out here, but you can see there's a lot of variation. So I'll just show you how I deal with this. Now that the plants are getting a little bit of size and starting to get crowded in these pots, I need to deal with them. So let's take it from here. So actually I did misspeak a little earlier. It wasn't Jethrine by Lauiana, it was Malibu Barbie by Lauiana, which is another really big pink-red plant with pink flowers, and it was kind of named by a friend, but I like it. Well, I just noticed that the entire previous section of this had messed up sound, so I'm doing it again. So anyway, I have 8 plants here, so I went ahead and prepared 8 pots. And I'm actually doing another one for another plant that I need, so I can show you this. This is just some arcane little details, but I like to put some cocoa chunky stuff, cocoa fiber at the bottom, and then fill it with my my mix. I used to use peat, but I used to use sphagnum. But I don't think we need to be using sphagnum for this. It's also a little bit of a pain to work with, and if you haven't noticed, it's also gotten extremely expensive. This is actually easier to work with and a little more renewable, I suppose. My mix, if you don't know, is equal parts turfus and fine perlite and fine pumice. And honestly, you can mix it up. You can do it different ways. They'll grow in almost anything. That's what I like. I do add a little bit of dolomite, not a whole lot. And I also add a little bit of some sort of compost or organic, little bit of nutrients. So lately I've been throwing a little worm castings in. In the past I've used mushroom compost, which is what's left of the manure after the mushrooms have taken everything out of it. You have to be a little careful with that because it's a little salty, but it worked for me. And then I do like to water them down just a little bit before I start because it just makes it a lot easier to work with. Then as for labeling, I have my own little system. So I just have here Malibu Barbie by Lauiana, and I have them numbered. I have 8 plants. There's nothing special about it. I do use the orange tags for this. This is just to kind of remind me out of all these plants that these are ones under observation, and later I'll pick the ones I want. I tend to use white ones for just plain old labels and green ones to mark flowers that I've pollinated. So there's some over here, for example. When I pollinate a flower, that just kind of reminds me to keep an eye on it and hopefully not miss the seeds. So now all the plants are out of here and I potted them up, and the next thing I'm going to do is just to get rid of this medium because there's no reason to keep it. You can recycle it, but I figure if there's any chance of disease or something in there, I don't want to keep it around. And so I've lined everything up sort of in order of interest for me, so maybe somebody cares. So the first two have really interesting venation for me. I'm really a sucker for good venation on a plant. I like a red edge, but especially I like the pattern of this venation. And I seem to remember from last year that it even spread more onto the leaves, especially in this one. So these are still kind of waking up. We are in Seattle and it was a long, cold spring, like I said before. So before I really make any decisions about it, I'll have to see how it grows this year. Then over here we have the most vigorous one, and that also has some of that nice edge on it with kind of an uneven veined border. And we have kind of an unknown, looks like one that's going to be really red. Even the winter leaves are really red. So we'll see what comes of that. That could be interesting or not. And another kind of a dark one. So who knows? I'll make a follow-up on this maybe a few months from now. Then this one is nice. I like the pattern. I do have several plants that are similar to it. Some of them that have en passé in them, a few different ones. But I like the color the more I look at it. And also there's the fact that these are Lauiana hybrids. So Lauiana is the red one, the one known as the only true red pinguicula. So BPT, which is one of the hybrids here, or excuse me, Malibu Barbie, is basically, it's a hybrid between Lauiana and it's complex now. Anyway, Malibu Barbie is 3/4 Lauiana, 1/4 Morinensis veripaz, which is a Morinensis that has a big purple flower. And so this one, being a backcross with Lauiana, is 7/8 Lauiana. So I should have some really nice flower color here, maybe just a little off red, and that coupled with nice leaves could be exciting. Then we have one that's just kind of green and meh. We'll see what happens. And then the last one is this one. A little bit of something going on in the leaves, but basically it's womp, womp, womp. So I'll grow it on. You know, like I said, it's not good to judge them too early because you have to let them get some size, and I haven't seen a flower on any of these. So Like I said, I like both a good flower and a good leaf. If something has just an amazing leaf and sort of a meh flower, I'll probably keep it around. And also, if it has just a stunning, amazing flower like nothing I've ever seen, and the leaves are less than knock your socks off beautiful, I might keep that one around too. But generally, I like to see what I'm going to get. So here we are, and I'll see you in a few months. Thanks for watching.